On a special edition of 12 News at 10, a historic battle at the polls.
Incumbent Dade Phelan fighting to keep his seat against David Covey.
Both candidates working hard to sway voters.
We've never had a speaker in 176 years from Southeast Texas.
I think that we need to have school choice and vouchers.
I sat down with both candidates facing off for State Rep District 21. Find out the issues they're focusing on. Plus,
David Covey has proposed increasing taxes.
We know you've seen the ads, but which claims are true and which ones need context? I'll break them down.
Every trick in the book is being played in this campaign.
12 News at 10 starts now.
Welcome to this special edition of 12 News at 10. Good evening, Southeast Texas. I'm Jordan Williams.
And I'm Brenda Matuti. Let's get right to the candidates themselves of State Rep District 21. I spoke one-on-one with incumbent Dade Phelan and his challenger David Covey to hear why they believe they deserve the votes of Southeast Texans.
I call the House Representatives of the 88th Legislature.
It's a race between the man who holds the gavel and the political newcomer just hoping for a seat in the House chamber. Incumbent Dade Phelan and David Covey, two men who say they can advocate best for Southeast Texas these next 2 years.
3, 2, 1.
Starting with your money.
Texas has a pretty high tax rate, the 13th highest in the country. But you would want to add on top of that?
To be clear, I'm not advocating for a consumption tax. I'm advocating to eliminate property taxes. We move that from the few people who own property, spread that out to a larger group of the population, and that makes everyone pay less.
I want to sit down and talk to him about his sales tax.
House Speaker Phelan, who's been representing the 409 the last 10 years in Austin, calls this plan a far reach that could leave voters with empty purses.
We cannot just rely on a consumption tax when we have no income tax and we have no property tax, whether it's fire, EMS, public education, drainage, you name it. It would only be funded by a consumption tax, which would be a sales tax, which means that you would go from a 8.25% sales tax to 27% sales tax.
Covey is a Mauriceville native. And when it comes to education, he's got a clear platform.
I think that we need to have school choice and vouchers and the ability of parents to choose what's best for their children.
But after advocating for eliminating property taxes, Covey offered no clear vision on what taxes would then fund public education.
No, I can't give you the rate.
It takes a village to pass laws in Austin, and during this time of political strife and division, both House District 21 contenders are relying on different approaches to serve this community.
At the end of the day, there are Democrats in the legislature, so how would you work with them if you were elected?
Well, they can work with us because we're going to do what's best for the state. If they want to work with us, then they can, but otherwise, they're going to have to do what they need to do.
I will never apologize for working with anyone who wants to work with me. That tradition of working with every member of the Texas legislature goes back to Sam Houston.
In the nearly 2 centuries since Texas established its first legislature, Phelan touts being the only House Speaker from the Golden Triangle.
We've never had a speaker in 176 years from Southeast Texas. We have record funding for our ports, record funding for our higher education, record funding for our transportation, record funding for our drainage. And that's just the local stuff I'm talking about.
12 News offered to host a live debate between both candidates for you ahead of Election Day.
He's dodging us, and then he tried to have a rigged debate with a different station with a moderator who is obviously of a liberal bent.
I would be willing to debate this man on Channel 12 for an hour, for 2 hours, you name it. I'll debate him on this corner of the street.
And while both candidates accepted in person, only Dade Phelan's campaign responded to our formal invitation. All right, we hope that gave you a clearer picture of what each candidate stands for. Now, this race has big implications for Southeast Texas, but only people living within District 21 are allowed to vote. So we made you guys a map. You can see all of Jasper counties and all of Orange counties are allowed to vote in this district.
It gets a little more complicated in Jefferson County. I'll slide out of the way so you can see parts of Beaumont, parts of Mid County, and parts of Port Arthur are not in this district. So again, you've got to live in the yellow shaded area, and it's open to voters who did not vote in the Democratic primary.
Dade Phelan doesn't represent our values, and it's time for him to go.
Covey wants you to pay higher taxes. It's wrong.
And those are the ads that you just cannot escape. They're everywhere as the runoff race for District 21 intensifies. And many of you guys have asked us to verify some of the claims that you have seen in these commercials.
So we brought in an advertising expert from the Dallas area to get an outsider's opinion. He calls this a fascinating race.
Sad David Covey's taken money from the TikTok guy.
Dade Phelan is the woke legislator of the year.
We'll spare you from having to listen to much more of the ads, but we want to dig into the claims because so many of you asked us to verify what's being said.
Every trick in the book is being played in this campaign.
Vinny Minchello is a principal at Glass House Strategy, a DFW-based advertising agency.
And there are different standards of truth-telling, basically, whether it's a state ad or a federal race.
Minchello says federal races have a different threshold that must be met.
Well, when we send a TV commercial to the station, we have to send along with them a piece of paper that proves everything we say. In state races, it's not always the case.
The same is true for all of those mailers.
Not everybody is going to ask for that proof for every ad.
Making this race feel more like the Wild Wild West.
Sometimes you find some stuff that gets through that's pretty slippery.
Minchello reviewed a series of TV commercials from both campaigns.
What's really interesting is in this race, you had a lot of outside forces come in, the Club for Growth, any number of PACs, and then a lot of sophisticated people have come to get involved in these campaigns.
Yeah, in fact, the first clip I sent you, I think, is from theirs. That's the one that starts with what we know as the Phelan Mansion.
Dade Phelan is from a very wealthy, well-known family.
But the ad featuring the Phelan Mansion is misleading. According to the Terrell Historical Library, the Phelan family gave the estate to the Sisters of Charity back in 1957, nearly 2 decades before Dade Phelan was born. Then there's this ad from the Phelan campaign.
David Covey has proposed increasing taxes on virtually everything you purchase. Boats, cars, guns, potato chips, even diapers.
This claim needs context.
The time has come for us to pass a bill to eliminate property taxes.
Covey supports abolishing property taxes and creating a consumption tax.
So for somebody like me, that gives me the freedom to say, wow, he's going to raise taxes on diapers. He's going to raise taxes on your house, your boat, your car, which is technically true, but certainly not the whole story.
Now on to the next claim.
Phelan sided with open border Democrats to kill key border security legislation.
This also needs context. The Texas Tribune says in 2023, House Bill 20 sought to create a team of police and deputized citizens to patrol the southern border. The legislation, which critics said would empower vigilantes and endanger the lives of asylum seekers and Hispanic Texans, died when Democrats killed it with a procedural tactic. Instead, it was Senate Bill 4 that gained momentum. Phelan never voted on that piece of legislation, which is normal for House speakers.
As Speaker, Dade Phelan passed the strongest border security bill in history.
That's somewhat debatable. Opponents argue it was the Texas Senate who authored and pushed for SB 4 and not the House leadership.
Speaker Dade Phelan is fighting back. Phelan secured billions for the wall
and will complete 100 more miles of President Trump's border wall.
That's generally true, according to the Texas Tribune. Senate Bill 3 appropriated $1.5 billion to continue building a barrier and to fund immigration enforcement efforts. Abbott signed it. The money would be added to at least $1.5 billion in contracts that the state has issued since September of 2021 to build about 40 miles of border barrier. The funds are in addition to more than $5 billion appropriated in the current budget to continue paying for Operation Lone Star. Again, opponents argue that Phelan is now taking credit for the Senate's work. We found one claim from Covey's campaign that appears to be false.
He allowed taxpayer-funded benefits for illegal aliens.
Texas Health and Human Services and the National Immigration Law Center refute that. The state says, quote, illegal aliens are only eligible for Medicaid for treatment of an emergency medical condition if they meet all other eligibility criteria, including residency requirements. In order to get Medicaid, you have to be a U.S. citizen or a legal permanent resident who has been in the U.S. for at least 5 years.
But watching that reel of ads from both the campaigns and from all the PACs, One of the things that really stuck out to me is what they don't say.
No one's mentioning the vouchers, but that is ultimately, arguably, what's on the ballot here.
That's an issue that I think does not move voters. Now, I've seen it in polls, and people are interested in it, but it's not an issue that moves voters.
Minchillo and other Texas experts believe this race is fundamentally a referendum for the GOP.
Any predictions?
I rarely make predictions, but I will make one quick observation, though. We've got millions of dollars on the line, players from out of state, really important stuff. And it's not so much to try to get somebody elected, it's just to try to kick somebody out.
And his other prediction that we will see twice the turnout as we had in the original March primary. Experts say where those voters live could also factor into the outcome.
All right, speaking of the voters, all week long, 12 News has met you guys at the polls. We were in Beaumont, Vidor, and Orange this week, and we wanted to hear from you guys on why either Phelan or Covey would be the right fit to represent Southeast Texas. So here's what 2 voters had to say.
And if someone that is a leader is someone in this position doesn't understand that fully, okay, then our area is going to suffer.
I appreciate him wanting to keep our taxes down. I appreciate him wanting to get more Republican representation on committees. So that's why we're Covey men and women.
Tomorrow will be the last day to cast an early ballot. And remember, Election Day is Tuesday.
Now, 12 News also spoke with a political analyst in Austin. We wanted his take on the statewide implications of this runoff.
You know, for the Southeast Texas region, have a lot of repercussions in that Dade Phelan, it connects them with a lot of things in the budget and appropriations process.
Bob Garrett believes Covey is looking to shake things up in Austin.
He's going to promote these issues at the conservative base, like school vouchers and other issues they feel have been stymied.
Even if Phelan wins Tuesday, Garrett believes the speakership could still be up for grabs. We've got all the info you need in our complete 12 News election guide. Just text the word VOTE to 409-838-1212 and we'll send it to your phone.